Superteams. When a team in one way or another accumulates 4 to 5 star players, that instantly makes them favorites to win a championship that year. They usually come together when a team already has a core of a few all-star level players, and they're able to bring in a couple more. But for some reason or another, they rarely ever work out, and there's a lot more failed super teams in league history than successful ones.
In the NBA right now, the idea of having a super team is not commonplace. It's something that many teams have tried to do for years to mimic the success that other teams had before them when the rare coming together moments happened. At one point in NBA history, super teams were impossible to form or were just lucked into. Teams like the Boston 3 Party, Garnett, Pierce, Allen, and Rondo are all great examples of that. The Miami Heat with James, Bosh, and D. Wade, they set a trend for a player and teams making it happen, and many were formed after them. But one had all of the potential, but sucked so hard. Allow us to tell you the story of the worst super team in NBA history. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 6. Who did this happen to?
In the 2012 offseason, the Los Angeles Lakers would make 2 big-time moves. First, they sent a bunch of draft picks to Phoenix in exchange for 38-year-old Steve Nash. Then, 1 month later, it appeared that the Lakers had hit the jackpot when they were able to basically trade an injury-prone Andrew Bynum for the best center in the NBA, Dwight Howard.
The irony of the label worst super team in NBA history wasn't just who was on the team, a team that had future Hall of Famers at the point of its formation, but also the very team that this happened to. Because if this happened to a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, the Charlotte Hornets, or some other team that has never reached the peak, you could say it was their attempt to make something happen and it just failed. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case at all. Rather, this happened to the team in the NBA in certain ways. This happened to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's right, the LA Lakers, the team that is home to 17 banners, tied for the most in NBA history alongside the Boston Celtics. You know, the team that brought Magic Johnson to the NBA, gave Kareem Abdul-Jabbar 5 more rings and cemented his legacy as one of the greatest ever. The team that had Shaq and Kobe together to win 3 titles in 4 seasons. And yes, the team that right now has a super team of their own via LeBron James and Anthony Davis that won the NBA title last year. With a team with such lineage, how in the world could a failed super team happen there? Number 5, the 2012-2013 Lakers.
And Nash and Howard getting into it about... Nash was telling him to move. Howard said he's wide open. The smaller guard was trapped. Howard wanted it thrown up. But this is the garbage you can't have.
So let's set this up by talking about what happened in the season before the super team was born. You see, the Lakers, headed by the late Kobe Bryant, had just gotten their butts handed to them by the Young Bucks that were the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were headed up by Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and beat the Lakers down 4-1 in the playoffs. In short, the Lakers needed an overhaul, and many of the commentary side of things agreed that they needed youth and defensive presence, which is where things went wrong in a hurry. Because their first big signing was going and getting Steve Nash. To be clear, Steve Nash is a former 2-time MVP, one of the least selfish players in NBA history, and a great player who earned his Hall of Fame spot. But they weren't getting peak Steve Nash, they were getting one of the oldest players still in the league. And while he was still good, he was hardly youthful. However, they did go and make a big grab when they nabbed Dwight Howard, who at that point in the NBA was the best center in the game. He had done well with the Orlando Magic, but was looking to break through to get an NBA title. And not unlike Shaq before him, he felt LA would be the best place for that. So you had Kobe, Steve Nash, Dwight Howard, and then Paul Gasol, and Andrew Bynum as the main 5 of the group. Now on paper, this seemed like a true all-star roster that was destined to win the title. And sure enough, many felt that the Lakers could win a title with this squad. Most stat predictions noted that they were likely to win over 60 games based on the talent that was acquired. But oh, how they were wrong. Number 4, injuries.
Season was like one I've never seen before. You've heard about all the injury talk, but most of you are sick of it as being used as an excuse for the Lakers' record this year, because Lakers fans expect greatness no matter what.
When you're playing a major sport, regardless of whether it's football, basketball, baseball, tennis, hockey, etc., you are going to have to deal with injury woes every now and then. For the 2012-2013 Lakers, their injury woes were numerous and costly, and a lot of it had to do with Dwight Howard. Going into the season, everyone expected him to be like Shaq when he came to LA, dominant in the paint, a force for defensive good, and so on. But as the games went on, something just felt off about him. He still put up solid numbers, including putting up 17 points a game and averaging about 12 rebounds, which is pretty good for a center. But people noticed he felt slower, less agile, and not as forceful as he was in Orlando. It turned out that he was playing with an injury all season. He tried to tough it out, but he had to end his season in February after he found out he needed back surgery. Fans burned him mightily for his costing the Lakers, but his teammates stood up for him, especially when he revealed the 5.5-inch mass that was taken out of his back after surgery. Though to be fair, it wasn't just Dwight who was injured. Steve Nash had his own back problems. He was 38 years old at the time and going into his 17th NBA season. He had a lot of wear and tear on his body, and it showed in his play. In just his second game at the Lakers, he went and fractured his leg and was out for a whole 2 months. Then when he got back, he played for a while and then had a hamstring injury that took him out of the final games of the regular season and the first couple of games in the playoffs. And by that time, Dwight was out as well, so both of the big gets were on the bench, which would have put more pressure on the mainstays to carry the load, right? Wrong. Gasol had various injuries throughout the season. Kobe got injured late into the season and had to miss the playoffs as a whole. Now, having an injury is a big deal in the NBA, but having 4 of your starting 5 key injuries and missing large scores of games, that is just a death sentence, no matter how you look at it. Number 3, bad fit.
Changing rotations and learning a new offense now featuring Dwight Howard and Steve Nash to go along with previous All-Stars Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol. Even some Laker fans are acknowledging this will not be an easy season, and there will be bumps on the road in the Lakers' pursuit of a championship.
A common misconception about both super teams and the NBA as a whole is that a player doing bad is solely on them. Now that's not always true. A player can have all the talent in the world, but if they're not coached the right way or on a team that can help them grow, well, they're doomed to be stagnant. We've seen that at times with various super teams as well, like with Houston, and their various attempts to give James Harden a partner to win a title with. It never happened. In contrast, the Golden State Warriors had a perfect unity with Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson that allowed them great success and no success when that core was injured. Chemistry and being able to work with one another is vital for success, and this Lakers team didn't have that even when they weren't all injured. Coach Mike Brown had what he felt was the perfect style of play for all of them via the Princeton offense. But early injuries and a lack of playing time meant that the score squad couldn't adjust to it fast enough, and thus they were basically chickens with their heads cut off. They went 0-8 in the preseason, 1-4 to start the regular season, and things didn't get much better from there. Number 2, new coach, same problems.
Mike, what update do you have on Pau? What update do you have on
Pau? Just what I heard. He couldn't come out. He was dizzy. Well, he was dizzy in the first half, went back in the dressing room, came back, finished the half, and then I think they were trying to give him an IV or something. He was real dizzy and just couldn't go.
Did he get in the head or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you know how that happened?
No, maybe sickness or flu. I don't know. That's all I know. I just heard that, and he's in it with Gary now. So.
Mike Brown was fired and replaced with Mike D'Antoni, who coached famously for the Phoenix Suns and Steve Nash. But while he was an offensive genius, he also had a problem with the players he had. Gasol, for example, was not the fastest man on the court, and D'Antoni was famous for his hurry-up style. Thus, Gasol had to play a much different role, and it hurt him in his play. He had his worst season in the NBA that year, and D'Antoni benched him multiple times and ripped him in the media for a lack of effort. Number 1, the result.
The 2012-2013 Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most hyped teams of NBA history. Most of us have a general idea of how this story ends, but within that, there are many details that often get missed, and honestly, there's enough story in this season for there to be an entire documentary or an ESPN 30 for 30 on it.
By the end of the season, things had fallen apart. They only made the playoffs because of luck and heavy ref interference. Look it up and you'll see exactly what we mean. But it didn't matter. Half their stars were injured, and they were swept out of the first round of the playoffs. Now the following season, Dwight Howard left for the Rockets, citing issues with Kobe. Nash and Kobe never really recovered from their injuries. Gasol did better the next year, but then left for the Bulls, and the Lakers were a sinking ship until they got LeBron James. And that first year didn't go the way people thought either. What this goes to show is the most ancient of rules in sports. Just because something looks good doesn't mean it'll work out. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And the Lakers will do all they can to make sure a super team like that does not happen to them ever again. So, what do you think? What do you think of this look at the worst NBA super team in history? The team's so bad they only lasted 1 year before things were broken up. Can you believe the top tier talent that was on this list that somehow never got things to work in their favor? Do you think that certain teams don't want to do super teams because they don't want to end up like the Lakers in that year? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.